Okay, for this activity, you're going to be looking at some examples of what we call particulate diagrams, or what the actual atoms and molecules would look like, and determining if those samples are representing elements or compounds, or a mixture of either elements or compounds. So we're going to go through the first example, and then you're going to do the other 6 samples on your own. So the first thing you want to do is, when you're looking at the sample, you want to draw it in the box so you have a representation of the particles themselves. So here you can see we have 2 red spheres and 3 yellow spheres. So we're going to draw our 2 red spheres, and then we'll draw our 3 yellow spheres. Okay, there we go. So the next thing we want to do is we want to determine, does that look like an element, a compound, or a mixture? Well, in this case, each of the little spheres represents an atom. So here we have yellow atoms and red atoms that would represent 2 different elements. So they're both elements, but they're not attached to each other. They're not bonded, which means they're not compounds. So we have 2 different elements mixed together. So we would call this a mixture. And it would be more specifically a mixture of elements. And now the next thing we want to do is we want to write these elements, compounds, or mixtures as if they were actual elements and write their formula. So we're going to use the letter of the color to represent the symbol for that particular element. So we have 3 yellow atoms, so we would say 3Y, Y for yellow. And we have 2 reds, so we would say 2R. Okay, so if you end up with a compound where the atoms are actually attached to each other, then you would put those letters together to make a compound. Like H2O has hydrogen and oxygen, right? So you'd put those letters together to make a compound. Okay, so let's take a look at the rest of the samples. You can pause this as you need to determine first what the drawing is, and then if it's an element, compound, or mixture, and then after that what the formulas are for all of the substances in that particular sample. Okay, so alright, we have sample 1 and sample 2. So take a minute, pause if you need to, and determine first what the drawing should look like, second if it's an element, compound, or mixture, and third write the formulas for what you see in each sample. Pause if you need to, and then move on to the next one. Okay, so now we have samples 3 and 4. Again, pause if you need to. And lastly, we have samples 5 and 6. Alright, once you're finished with these, the next part of this activity is going to take place at the lab table. So take your paper back to the lab tables. You're going to be looking at some actual mixtures and determining what's in those mixtures and if they are homogeneous mixtures or heterogeneous mixtures.